Hey everyone, this is my DBMS exercise number 5, and so these are the guidelines which I am going to follow. And over here in this, the first step is to download and install the Eclipse IDE, which I've already done in my exercise number 1. And as you can see, this is my Eclipse IDE, and so I already imported my project, which I'll show in the later part of this video. And I have it installed over here in my downloads directory. This is my Eclipse. This is my eclipse.exe starting shortcut, and then my workbench, or I shall say workspace. So it is in C drive, users, Nethic, and in the Eclipse workspace. And this is exercise 5 folder. This is exercise 4 folder. And so after that, we need to download and install the Tomcat 9. So under the servers section of my Eclipse, you can see servers Tomcat 9.0, server stock, and then over here servers and then Tomcat 9.0. In order to install this, so it was a very straightforward installation, and I had already done that in my exercise number 1. And so I've downloaded this in my downloads folder, and this is from where you can start your Tomcat, but I won't recommend you doing that, because if you run using software or it's run on server in Eclipse, then it will show an error that port number 88 is already being used. So delete that file or its application which is running on that port and then try again. So if you want to run it from here still, so I'll just go terminal, right click, run as administrator, so that it gives us root privileges, and then just copy this cd and hit enter. And then just if you're using a Windows machine, then just start and tab, so startup.bat, that's the batch file which Windows uses, and the .sh source file, for example this shutdown and that's for the Mac and Linux users. And so I shall minimize this, yeah, and then the open Eclipse which I already showed you, and then the setup database named testdb. So this is my SQL workbench, and which I just started by searching my SQL workbench. Yeah, so the first statement, what it does is that use testdb. So we will just use the testdb database, which I guess we created in the exercise 2 or 3, and then we just check that if there's a table named user, we will delete that. That's what drop means. And then these statements, this creates the table until this, yeah. So that's the email, which cannot be null. First name, which cannot be null again, last name, which cannot be null again, and password, which cannot be null. And then that's the birthday, and that's the date. So if you enter some null value like 0000, then it won't take that as a date, and then it will throw you an error. And then that's the address section, and then the cash balance. So at start everyone gets 1,000, and then the PPS balance at start everyone gets 0, and then the primary key is email, and we have selected email so that as email is unique to everyone, the name cannot be sometimes unique, like two people can have Susie named. And so we kept the primary key as email, and that's one of the reasons why it is not null. And then what these statements do is that it just inserts these values in the table, and we have a root value 2 and root user 2, and then this statement just shows you all of the data from that user table. So if we run that using control enter, and as you can see, it ran without any error over here, and our data is being displayed successfully. And so I shall just minimize this, and then that's what this did. And then yeah, so download the code, and then this code I downloaded. I just code download zip, and then I unzipped it in the Eclipse workspace. Let me just show you that. And Eclipse workspace, and that's the exercise 5 folder. And then you want to import that. I just selected file, import, projects from folder archive, and directory, and then selected this and select folder, and then just finish. As you can see, you can select the finish, but I already imported it. And then I do a right click on database properties, and in order to check that if the project facets are correct or not, so project facet, and it's at Java version is at 17, which is the version which I'm using currently right now. And then the Java compiler, so yeah, so this is enable project specific settings. So you can Eclipse gives an option to enable the project specific settings. So if you are working on a project which you intend to run on the Java compiler 16, then you can select that. But in this in over here, I'm going to select the compiler which I have on my system. So it's the Java version 17, and then you just click apply and close in order to for that to save. And then okay, and yeah, so we shall change the password and the user DAO. Yeah, so this is the user DAO file, and then this is John, which we created with all of the root privileges when we first started the MySQL workbench. And then yeah, so as you can see, I have John over here. This is his password. And yeah, make sure that to have this password set, I mean the password which is set first when creating someone named John, and just replace this with your own version of password, or else it might throw an error, or it will throw an error definitely if it's not the same. And then that's done, and web content register JSP. Okay, so we shall run the register JSP. So right click, run as, run on server, localhost, select the server we want to run it on, and we only have this server as of now. And then select that and finish. And yeah, so let's add some value. logan@gmail.com, logan and p, and then the birth date. Let's put my birth date over here, and something easy password, but don't put your easy passwords in your life. And then register. Okay, what seems the issue? Okay, so that's the wrong password, I suppose. I'll just change the password. Wait. Okay. Paul 22,000. Just list this 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 and register. And so yeah, so that was the error. I accidentally entered the wrong password in my code, and then we have inputted logan@gmail.com, and his password is 1234, and then we shall log in over here. And yeah, so you have successfully logged in. And if you see in our MySQL workbench, and as I stated earlier, this line of code prints all of the values in our table. So we will just control enter, and yeah, here is our logout. And so yeah, so we have a new one, and then we haven't added any address, street number, address, street, address, city, so it is showing null. And as you can see over here, we have just added it as it can be null value, and so it is null. And we have a logout button over here. Let's check what the root view is. And so in order to get the root view, we have to log in with our root ID. And so let's check what is our root ID. So that's the root, that's the password is pass1234, and so we shall log in with the root. So root pass1234 and login. So this shows all of the list of users, and as you can see, this login Paul. Okay, so root user has a different function which not all of the users have, or which none of the users have, and that's the initialize the database. Yeah, so initialize the database. Okay, we'll just restart it. Yeah, we shall just stop this. Yeah. Register server, localhost this, and finish. Okay. I guess he is already in there, so let's just, there's just a new guy. Let's say pratik@gmail.com. Yes, Pratik Gandhi, and let's just add some birth date. Two people can have the same birth date. So a simple password 1234 and register, and then let's just register with the Pratik guy and 124 login. Okay, so we are logged in, so it works. And now let's log in as a root, and the password is 1234 login, and over here, so that's Pratik. Okay, let's initialize the database. And so what initialize the database does is that it creates a new database table, and then it adds the values which the root user has already added in the user DAO file. And let me just show you that. Okay, so that's the values which it adds over here. As you can see, Susie, Dawn, Margarita, Joe, and we will have these guys in our, so Susie, Sophie, Joe, Margarita. So these are the values which we manually entered, and actually this is the way for the root user to reinitialize the database. Okay, so let's go through all of the code one by one. And so the first code, so these codes are just used to block the, I mean, to import various Java classes and for different purposes such as handling files, managing SQL databases, and implementing the Java servlets. And then what this does is that it creates a Java servlet called the Java servlet class called the user DAO and maps it to a URL endpoint slash user DAO using the added web servlet annotation. So that's an annotation. And then what these lines do is that these lines declare the private member variables for this class, including a connection and object for database connectivity, and set them to null by default so that the serial version UID is a unique and the serial version UID is a unique identifier that allows the class to be serialized and deserialized, and the constructor is empty. And then what this function does is that this method establishes a connection to the MySQL database using the JDBC driver, and it uses the class.forName method to load the MySQL JDBC driver and then calls the driver manager to get the connection method to establish a connection to a specific database. So in our case, that's the testdb user. So here we have the testdb, and then the user is our John, which we created in the first class itself. And then this link, as we can see over here, it includes the database, host, port, and the credentials. So that's our port and these are credentials. This function, it is used, so this whole function, so it is over here for the user authentication, and it calls the connect func to method to establish a database connection, and then constructs a SQL query to select a user by email, and then it prepares the query using a prepare statement, sets the email parameter and executes the query to get a result set, and it finally checks whether the result set has any rows, that is a user was found with the given email or password, and then returns the value, the true or false, and that's why we have boolean has basically two values, true or false. And then as we had a different web page for the root user, as you can see, this is the root and this is the pass, and if we enter this details in our database login page, which I shall just show you right here, run as one on server, localhost, tomcat, finish, and yeah, so this is the page, and if we log in via root, then it will connect to a different page, and then if we are a normal user, then it shall connect to the user.gp or GSP, and then as we had seen earlier, this is what it shows if we connect via the root page. And then let's go again to the user DAO, and over here, so this lists all of the users, and which we can see if we log in via the root user. So let me just set that up. Yes, root and pass 1 2 3 4, and yeah, so this function, what that function does is that it lists all of the users, and the string SQL which goes into this is the select asterisk from user. As I had said earlier, this command is used to display all of the values in our table. And then we have the disconnect function. So if this function, if this code catches any error, then the connection is closed, and that's what it is. So this is the insert function. So what it does is that when we log in via, when we register, when we have the register page open as where we added the Pratik Gandhi and Logan Paul. And so what it does is that it goes into for this function, and then we added the email and then the first name and then the last name, and then the data is added to these question marks over here. And then these are the other public get user functions. So if we select for just the email, and then it just selects from where the user email matches, and this is check email function, and that's the check password function. And then this is the initialization function, and over here as a root user, when we selected this, the initialize the database, so that's what it did. So we drop the database if it exists, and then we create a new database, use the database, and then we drop the table. If there's a user table, then we drop it, and then so this is exactly the same code as we ran in the MySQL workbench over here. And then what it does is that it initializes the database with its own preset values. So if we added our own values, like someone named Pratik or someone named Naitik or Logan, and if we select initialize the database, so it will just delete the whole user table, and then it will initialize the new user table, and these are the values which will be inputted in it. So all of the things which we enter go through the control servlet. So over here, which is over here, and so this is the code. And so as we saw in our earlier exercise, so what it does is that we have login, we have register, we have initialize, and so let's say we do the login. So what it does is, and it takes request and response. So what it does is, so let me just, yeah, so this is where, so let's say we want to log in with our email ID, logan@gmail.com. So it gets is that it gets the parameter email, and then it gets the parameter password, and then if the email is equal to the root, so it first checks that if it's the root user who is trying to log in, and if the email is root and then the password is pass1234, which is a root email and password. So what it does is that it will throw that, it will just print that login successfully into root over here. Wait, let me, yeah, so this is what it does. So okay, let me just show you the whole console. So as you can see over here, we selected the login option, and then we entered the correct email and password. That's the reason it went login successful, redirecting. And then in the recent run of commands, we logged in using the root command, and so that's the reason it showed us login successful and redirecting to the root. And as you can see, this is the one. And else, if the user dot is valid and email and password, the current user equals to email, and then that's what happened over here. Let me show you. Yeah, so login successful redirecting. So that's what it is. Yeah, this one. And then else if our password is wrong, so let me just show that to you. Log out. And so if you can see, wait. So yeah, let's add some gibberish. So yeah, 9122 is not in the user database, and password and login. So as you can see, it didn't throw up an error over here because we weren't using the correct email and password. But over here, oops, sorry, yeah. Okay. So once we have logged in using the root email ID and password, and once it was successful, it will redirect to us to a new function, root page. And so as you can see, root page, it's over here. And what it does is that it just prints out that, hey, this is the root view. So yeah, as you can see over here, I'm going to redirect you to a root view. And over here, the attribute is set to list user. So as we saw earlier in the user DAO, where we list all of the users. Wait, let me just show you. Yeah, so over here, as you can see, it just lists all of the users, and this is a string. This is the SQL query which it takes. Which one was it? Okay, yeah, the control server to Java, and over here, we are and then it lists all of the users, and then we are redirected to the root view.jsp. So that's what it is. Yeah, I already opened it. So that's the root view.jsp. And over here, this is a basically a Java HTML file package, and HTML is a language. Sorry, HTML is HTML is a language which we use to code for web pages, but it's a pretty old language. And then over here we div align center. And so this is going to display all of the users. And yeah, so let me just log in with the root account, so it will be much easier. Yeah, so the initialize, the form action button initialize. So what it does is that it takes the input type as submit. So we have a lot of input types in HTML. It's like radio button or checkboxes, and in this example it's the submit, and then the value is initialize the database. And if we select the logout option, so what it does is that it redirects us to the login.jsp option, login.jsp web page. So here it is. That's the web page which we use to log in as a root or as another user. And then this is what it does. So that's the h1 tag. So it is the largest font which we can use, and that's basically the heading 1 font. And yeah, so over here, and then we align it center, and then the border is 1, cell padding is 6, and then this is what it does is that list of all users. This is the heading 2 tag, and then we have the table headings as these, and then the values are these. So dollar and then users.email, so that lists all of the emails. Users.firstname, that lists all of the first names, and so on and so forth. But what if it's not the user, not the root user? So what it does is that it redirects us to the activity page.jsp, so which is right over here. And then, as you might have remembered, it just, if you are a normal user and if you log in, so it just shows you that welcome, you have successfully logged in. And then we just get basically one button, which is the logout button, which again redirects us to the login.jsp button. And then it just shows, and then we have the paragraph tag, which states that you can show all the transactions or other attributes here, like balance, name of the user, and others. Okay, so let's go back to control servlet function. Yeah. Okay, this is much easier. So we have the register option over here. And let's find the register option. So just okay, so that's the register button over here. And then, as you might have known, so when we hit the register, so we take the email, we take these inputs over here, and then if password is the same, so and then check the email. Okay, so what it does is that if we have the same email ID which has already been logged in over there, so if it's not the same, it will just show that, hey, the registration is successful and we have added it to the database, and it prints it to the console and not on the web page. And then in the users, so we create a new user, and this is the database. I mean, this is the data which we add in the table by creating a new row. And then over here, I shall just run this. Okay, so this is the one. So let me just create Pratik, because we initialize the database and then login. So as you can see, there's a cycle. So as soon as you logged in, you were redirected to the login page here. Register over here. Let's register. Pratik Gandhi on pratik@gandhi.com. Oh, sorry. pratik@gmail.com. And then let's add that date of birth. 124, register. Okay, so we registered and then we are taken to the login page, and now I shall log in. Okay. 124, login. Okay, so we are successfully logged in, and now I'll again register with the same username but with a different first name and last name. So let's say Pratik and then let's say he shares the same date of birth, and then the password is the same, and register. So yeah, so as you can see, registration failed, username taken, please enter a new username. And over here, as you can see, username taken, please enter a new username. And then this is the login option, so we logged in true, and that was the correct one. And then else registration failed, or else the two passwords which we added, so if they don't match, so as you could have seen, there were two passwords. So password one, and then we just confirm the password that, hey, this is the password which I want to add. And then if it doesn't match, then let me just show that to you. And I'll just check at gmail.com. com, and then 2000, okay, and then 1234, and over here I shall add 12345 and register. So yeah, as you can see, it even through this error, password and password confirmation do not match, and it should have thrown over here. Yeah, so password and password confirmation don't match. So this is what the register does. And then the other one is initialize. So whenever we use the initialize function, so what it does is that it goes to the root page and the user.to in it, and so it goes to the root page, and as we have already seen the root page, wait, okay, so yeah, this thing goes to the root page, and which is over here, wait, which is over here. Yeah, so this is our root page. So as you might have seen, when we log in via the root credentials, so we are redirected to the root view, which only the root user can see, and it even prints this. As you can see, this prints that, hey, this is the root view, and then we list all of the users, and then we are redirected to the rootview.jsp, which is over here, which I already showed. So let me show you the initialization function, and over here I shall just search in it. Yeah, so this is the initialization function over here, and these are the functions which will run in that. And as we have already seen that this resets all of the values. And then the other one is root, so that's similar to the previous one. So if it's the case, so this is the switch case, and if this is the case, then it will just go to the root page, which is right over here. And then we have the another case called as logout. So what it will do is, okay, let me just control and okay, yeah, so it's over here. So it will just make the current user as null value. So that's basically what logout means, and then we will be redirected to the login.jsp as soon as we log out, so that another user can log in. And then we have the list command. So if that is the case, then we are gonna just list all of the users. So yeah. Okay, so what these numbers do is that they just print on the console that, hey, the function has started, the list user function has started, and as soon as it ends, so as soon as these commands are run successfully, until there is no error, so it will just then print this out, list people finished, and then a number of ones over here in this console window. And then what it does is that it just goes to the user list.jsp, which is just right over here, and then this is the all users list over here. So we align it to the center, and then the border of the table is 1, and then these are the table heads, and these are the values. So it just takes it from our MySQL database, and that's the dollar users.email. So users is the table name, and then the email is the attribute name. Basic overview flow diagram. So as soon as you do a web page input, let me just show that to you. Yeah, so this is a web page input. So as soon as we do that successfully, we are taken to the register.jsp file. I mean, that's the register.jsp file for the web page input which we want to do. And as soon as we enter the details in the register.jsp file, we are just taken to the control servlet where, yeah, so where everything is matched. So if we want to register, so let me just search for register, find, yeah, so this is a register, and then we put this data and then the email. So if the both passwords match, and then if the email is not already taken, so we are just successfully logged in. And then it is gonna go to the user.to. As soon as our control server takes all of the data which we inputted over here, it will go to the user.to. Sorry, yeah, so the user.to, this one, and so which is over here. So what this user.do does is that it is going to manually enter all of our data which we inputted into our database management system. So user.do, it will just input our data into the database management system. So that's the input. And now we will see about the output. So let's say we want some data from the database. So what it does is that it will give it the data to the user.do, which gets the data, and conveniently the function is named as get user. So I'll just search it, and yeah, so this is the values we will get. And so as soon as it gets all of the values, it will just as an input, it will just put it into the control servlet, or it will pass to the control servlet. So let's get the list function over here, control servlet, and then the list function, which should be on top. Yeah, so this is the list user function, and as I explained earlier, what it does is it gets all of those values from the user.do file, and all those values to the JSP file. It will just send all of those values to the JSP file, and it is going to send it to the userlist.jsp. So that's the userlist.jsp, and this is what it prints. It prints all of our values with the table heads being these, and list of the people, and then that will be the corresponding display file. And then if we select, if the root user logs in, and then if he or she wants to view the file, and if he, and as the root user has the initialize the database option, so he or she will be redirected to the root view.jsp file. It just depends upon which option do we select. Okay, so that's all from my end, and if you think that I missed some pointer out, so please do let me know. And that's all. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video.